we're almost there. And yes, we are live.
I've been live all morning.
First of all, thank you for coming and talking to me about community. And I wanted to just quickly say a little bit about our project, the 4 pillars, and why this is something that we're doing, which is this constant exploration of how to be together and how, as a theater company that looks very deeply at the engagement with community and service to community, how that pans out in this sort of structure that has become the 4 pillars that holds up what we call theater for social renewal. So there's kindness, community, artistry, and the whole artist elements. And the thing that's so fascinating is, having started with kindness and now moving on to community, and looking forward into artistry, there really is such an interplay between all of these.
I can't talk about one without talking about the others.
Right. And I think that is exactly what we're seeing, and yet we're not talking about it enough. That I think is why I'm really doing this project. I thought about it. Why am I doing this? Why do I want to talk to people so much in this time period? And I think it's because we're just not having the conversation enough about what is kindness, what is community. These words are words we use so freely. Yeah. And we don't, and there's my dog. And we don't, it's
time.
We don't really go deeply enough into them. And so I think that that's why I want to talk to you, Glenn, about community, because you've had such an interesting sort of experience, talking on both, living in both of these worlds, this Disney world, and then the gallery theater, which you and Mark created community, built a world that people responded to deeply and passionately. So
yeah,
I would really just love you to.
You'd be surprised how often at my Disney job I end up talking about kindness. And although we don't use the word community, we use the word culture, which is really the foundation upon which a community is built, right?
Yeah.
Culture is the kind of big, lofty things beneath which all of these communities come together because they have a belief. And I was thinking about it today, and I thought, believing in something seems to be the thing that gives birth to communities, right? And at Disney, it's inherent in our marketing. We believe we create happiness. That is the thing. If you are going to join the community, the culture of Disney, you kind of have to believe that. You not only have to believe that we actually are in the business of creating happiness, but you have to believe that it has some worth, that there's a point to it, that it's a service to the community, is creating happiness. If you don't, you will not be a good fit in that community. And that is, now you can not enjoy some of the hows or the things we do to get there. Commercialism, long lines, expensive tickets, right? Those are all things that happen on the journey to creating happiness. However, if we all keep going back to this is what we do, that's when we become really successful and start creating a community, because we all start feeling good about ourselves and each other.
So this is an interesting idea. This is an interesting thing you're saying. It almost sounds like what you're saying is that if we're going to look at community, and Mac talked about this when I talked to Mac last time, this idea of allegiances, and
Yeah.
you're talking about belief. And so I'm wondering if that is almost as if we're talking about a consciously constructed community, then we're talking about a mission statement. Is that something in there somewhere, do you think,
Yes,
with
it
the
is.
idea of belief?
Yes, it is. Sometimes we use mission statements more for a business purpose, but there are other times where we use mission statements for what they're really meant for, which is that this is who is the core of what our belief system is, right? How do we think we're going to be useful? A mission is something you do. That mission needs to be useful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, at the Gallery Theater, we thought the artists in the community, Mark and I decided we were going to serve the artists in the community as well as the community at large. So there were two kind of parts to that. Serving the artists in the community was all about supporting them in a way that felt more professional than maybe they were used to in some of the other theaters they worked at. So that's why we tried to provide professional direction. I would haunt the hallways of Disney looking for professional stage managers who are now doing a desk job, and I would get them to come over to the Gallery Theater so that we could experience what it was to have the artist taken care of by a professional, right? I went to my art director friends and I had them come in and work with our set designers and teach people how to paint things. And I did that with our lighting designers. And we brought in professionals into this tiny little 50-seat theater. And the reason we did that is to allow the artists in the community to fully experience what it was like to be supported as an artist. That, and that's where I think Mark's and my belief created something so special in the Gallery Theater is we believed in everybody's worth as an artist and we wanted to support that. So that at the end of the day, people didn't come to the gallery because they enjoyed seeing themselves on stage. They came to the gallery because they felt they were participating in creating something artful. And that when they went home, they were not just proud of themselves and how they contributed to it, but they were proud of the product. And they felt it was useful because that was the other side of the Gallery Theater is what were we doing for the community?
So then I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just saying that our goal was to activate the minds and the hearts of our community by making a connection to them.
Well, see so these are some words that I think are really important. So you're saying the idea that everybody's bringing their worth, they're either bringing their worth or they're being given an opportunity for their worth to be realized.
Yes.
That in that individual experience, there's a collective experience of we are doing something useful. We are doing something for our larger community, for our neighbors, our friends, our family. And in that, all of that kind of two-leveled experience, you're having the opportunity of connection between the people you're bringing into the theater itself, and then the people they're connecting to in their neighborhoods, in their larger communities. So we're looking at worth, usefulness, and connectivity.
Connectivity. And I have to tell you, those are the universal things that have bridged both these communities.
Right.
And I'm fortunate enough to sometimes work in other theater communities with different theaters around Southern California, and I'm finding that that's what everybody wants. You're not always successful getting there. This is not about saying I'm in nirvana in any of my situations, right? But if I keep that as an intentional part of my thinking, it helps guide how I talk to people. It helps guide how I cast people. It helps guide how I lead them. It reminds me of how my own personal thoughts and behaviors can affect that in a positive manner.
I think that word also that phrase you just said, intentional thinking, that's also a theme that I'm seeing in my conversations, right? From kindness, as sort of an intentional way in which we grow and train human beings to be kind. In the conversation with Mitch, we finished it by talking about rigorous intention of community building and all of that. And you just mentioned it again. And I think that's a really strong word. That is an important word, especially when we're thinking about re-entering community now.
You know, it's not only intention of thought, the thought process, but it's having action.
Yes.
It's actually redefining how you participate based on that intention.
Right.
And huge at Disney right now. It's funny that even before this whole thing's hit, we were talking a lot about that. I don't know if you've ever read Simon Sinek. He's kind of one of those business gurus, and he wrote a very famous book called Lead with the Why. And what he said was that people aren't motivated by what they do as much as they're motivated by why they're doing it. Right?
Well, that gets back to what we said about mission, right?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that has been floating in the business community for years. However, it's one thing to say it and think about it and say, yes, we should lead with the why. But what does that actually mean when you're talking to people, when you're putting teams together, when you're bringing a group together and saying, okay, we have this to do? Because it can seem inefficient to take your eye off of the list of things that need to get done and back it up to take a moment to get everybody on the same page of why. Sometimes we assume everybody knows and has it, and sometimes we just, come on, guys, let's just do this. Just do it. But ultimately, when you deal with a big company like Disney, that's the least efficient thing you can do. Because now, every time you're giving people something to do, you have to give them every little thing to do if they haven't already brought into the why. But if they know what the why is, they will come up with most of those things themselves.
Well, because that's the thing. That's where I'm most intrigued by these conversations, right? Because what you're talking about is giving people, by telling them why, by giving them a vision and a mission, right, to become a part of a greater action. Then you're giving them the opportunity to contribute from their authentic selves, right? To authentically contribute to the community, as opposed to having a task to say, okay, everybody take their pen and put it over here. It's a much more creative and intellectual use of each individual to contribute to the whole.
Yeah, I have to tell you, you have to be able to trust to do that and risk. And when I talk about belief, you actually have to believe that they have something to offer. And you have to believe that the people you're working with want to do something great. You know, I recently went into some training mode at Disneyland, and I was looking at some of the training materials, and so now I'll make this up because I can't give away any Disney secrets.
Well,
right?
I was going to say, you have to be careful what you say.
Right, I have to be careful of what I say. But I think this makes perfect sense. if I'm working in Fantasyland and I'm training a cast member, I can turn to them and say, okay, here are ways you would greet people. You could say, Your Majesty. You could say all these things. Oh, here's body language that you should use. Oh, here is an attitude you might have. Oh, here are things you shouldn't say. You shouldn't say you guys. You shouldn't say this. And you could come up with lists of things to give them to do and say. Or I could bring a group of people into the room and say, okay, I am royalty who just came into the room. Greet me. And let them start and then talk about what they did. What did you do? Well, I used this kind of language. Well, I had this kind of feeling. I had body language. I had this. Let them come to you with what they do. And then they begin to own it. And they begin to see what other people are doing as well. And they also feel like they were trusted for a moment to use their own brain and creativity.
You said 3 things, all right, that I want to ask about. You talked about trust, and you talked about risk, creating an environment for trust and risk to take place so that they can feel that, one, that a participant in this community can feel that they own it, you said. So can you talk about, from your perspective, how do you create an environment, a community that supports trust and risk so that people can freely participate in the larger belief? How has your experience shown how that gets developed, either at the gallery or at Disney? Like, how does that happen? That's a big thing. That's vulnerable, right?
Yeah, I was going to say vulnerability. So there's another word that's in there, which is safety. Mm-hmm. It has to be safe. It has to be okay. The only way to make risk acceptable is that when somebody does something that is just way off, we don't dismiss it. We look at it and say, okay, well, so why that? Because the person had a thought process that got them there. And although this may not be the choice where we want to go, the thought process that got us there was probably very valuable. And it might open us up to a way of thinking we hadn't thought about. And to me, that's the most exciting thing. Right. Somebody comes up with something that is off the wall or a little to the left, and I go, okay, so why would you do that? And that conversation can lead us somewhere. And now I'm not telling them no. I'm asking them why. Right? And I find myself doing that on Facebook too. I don't post a lot, but I comment a lot, and I find myself asking, but why would you think that? Why? Because I'm really interested in it. I can't fake that either. And that's when you talk about how we get other people to be authentic, is we have to be authentic. Max said something about that really resonated with me, which is, how can I create a community that feels inclusive, if I don't lead a group of people in an inclusive way, right? Yeah. I have a friend that I work with at Disney who had recently this year taught me the phrase, sometimes the method is the message. Mm-hmm. Right? And I love that, because it's about action. It's what can I do? And it's your question. What do you do to create that? Well, you've got to live up to that vision yourself.
Right.
You can't say, so this is what I want you all to do. You have to behave in that way. And if I want you to be an inclusive individual who values the thoughts and ideas of other people around you, who constantly keeps their eye on the main goal. We are creating happiness, or we are treating each other like artists, or we need to keep focused on connecting with people. Well, then that's how I need to behave, and that's kind of how I need to constantly look to make sure, are we all behaving that way? And if we're not, ask the question, why?
Mm.
You know, don't point your finger and shake it at somebody. Oh, look, I work at Disney. I'm two finger pointed. But the
Time
idea,
to retire, Glenn.
yeah, sunk in.
Too automatic.
I just really be interested in why, right? And I think that creates a connection when you are seriously just wanting to know.
Yeah. And that is in the times we live in right now, that's a very challenging question, I think, for people. It puts one in a vulnerable place, right? Because we all seem to be living in a world where everybody needs to know, whether you do or not.
Yes.
Right. But if you admit you don't,
also, sometimes when we say why, that the person receives it as judgment.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to work harder at, is to say, I'm interested in why, without saying, I'm interested in why because you're wrong and I'm going to talk you out of it. I'm interested in why because I want to find out where we're on the same page.
So then really what we're talking about also, which came up in kindness when we were discussing that pillar, is listening. Right?
Oh.
So communication and listening with regards to community building and maintaining healthy community building, growing healthy community. Now you're kind of moving us into the communication and listening part. Yeah?
Yeah. I think that is when I work at Disney, one of the things that I've been working on recently is taking a look at even the way we approach non-artistic teaching, right? We even would sometimes call it, we're making a presentation. We're making a presentation. That connotes talking at people. And for years, as a show director, I was occasionally asked to coach people in presentation techniques, executives, and so on and so forth. And my first thought was, it should never feel like you're talking at people. It should always feel like it's a conversation.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of having a person teach you something rather than giving them a book and say, do this, it's all written out, it's clearer, and then the person can refer to it whenever they want. Nothing could be clearer. But it doesn't have the connection, and it doesn't allow people to say, wait, if that's the purpose, might I also get to it this way? And the answer is, of course, yeah, you might. I was thinking about that the other day because I was thinking about an experience you and I had. I was directing Barry in a show called Bamberwood. And it was an original show, so the script had its ups and downs. And there was this one scene, and we had gone through the scene, and I was okay with it. And a lot of other people would have said, well, if the director's okay with it, let's just move on. But I noticed that at the end of the scene, you were extraordinarily unhappy. Probably because you said so.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we agreed in that moment that we were not going to leave that rehearsal till we were both happy
Yeah, I
with
remember that.
that scene. And we spent hours on this one scene. And at one point, the approach that was taken for that scene made it so much better and went in such an unexpected path that not only did the two of us leave loving it, but the writers who were completely resistant then turned around and said, yeah, that's what we meant. Yeah, absolutely. Because it was so much better. It was so much better. That to me was so important, because my promise to you as the show director was that you should come away feeling great about what you do. You know, that there is integrity, that there's an honesty to you, that you get to go home feeling like, okay, I had my voice and I accomplished what I needed to. And it doesn't matter whether I'm working in a 50-seat community black box theater or whether I'm putting up a major press event with Julie Andrews. I have that same promise.
Yeah.
My dog is barking at the people who are working on the community grounds outside. She's protecting me.
That's good.
Yes.
She's a good girl, Matilda. You know what that story reminds me of, or made me think of in a way that I hadn't really thought before, is how important, I guess, clarity has always been to me. Like that is a very big thing for me, that I understand something and that I'm clear, so that I can fulfill the task or the mission or whatever it is as completely as possible. And it makes me think about how important clarity is in this discussion, like in communication and in how we interact with one another within our communities, and when we construct them or when we enter into new ones, or invite people into ours, that we have a tendency, I think, as human beings, to make assumptions or to adjust to environments that maybe are not as clear for us as they could be. And so then we spend a lot of time navigating, as opposed to being able to just beautifully offer up ourselves into this space. And I'm just noticing that there's one person on the chat that's saying that they agree about, in a work environment where people would rather have a discussion, would rather talk to one another. And I think that maybe this concept of clarity, and a lot of the things that we're talking about now, trust and the ability to take a risk and feeling that you understand that you have a common belief, not religious belief. I mean, that would work, but
it has in the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of that helps us feel connected together.
Yeah.
When we can connect with that common goal and talk to each other on how to get there, I love to kind of lead by creating a vision that everybody can fall behind, and then I want to get to the back of the group and help push them forward.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not the only way to lead. It's just the way that I found brings me the most joy. And in that process, I create communities. Right. At Disney, I was given, I can talk about this because it's no longer there. We had an area called the Ranch. And when I was asked to bring this area to life over, I think it was a 10 or 12 year period of time, I'm not exactly sure how long I got to play in that area of the park. When we first went to it, I remember talking to the cast about how at Disneyland, so often, so much of our entertainment is, ta-da, I'm going to entertain you, here it is. And I thought that perhaps we could create an area where we got to say, come on in, sit down a spell. I want to talk to you, right? Which was a little different, than the other areas of the park. And once the cast got that, my direction job became extraordinarily easy. I could have talked to them about, let's all get behind for the ranch, so it's country music, and that's what's important, and this is those were sub themes. Really, the big thing was, do we believe in the value of having a place where we see people and make them feel just welcome?
Okay, so what you're saying is exactly what I'm so intrigued right now about, like, what can theater artists do to help our communities? And to me, it's that, right? That it is, we can, of course, distract our communities and entertain our communities, but we have other values that allow our artists like you to do exactly that. That was your instinct, right?
Yes.
You filled that, you saw that need at Disney, that more
Yes.
of the same was not needed. What was truly needed was connecting to your guests. And you created an environment to connect, right? And it seems like right now we desperately need this connection within our communities and and I did notice also, because I keep looking over here at the chat, somebody mentioned that we kind of are harking in some of the things you were saying back to our last discussion, that if things aren't clear, then you have that opportunity to have discourse, tribal decisions, to make assumptions, right, of worse interpretations. And that's not an invitation to come together at what I call the tribal fire and celebrate our humanity, right? That's what we do as theater artists. We have that ability, and you used that in the corporate environment of Disney to give an experience of something genuine.
When you talk about connection, Barry, connection can't happen unless you actually see the person who's sitting across from you.
Bravo. Exactly.
I mean, really see them. So it's not just listening, it's seeing them. And I mean, seeing them in everything. Mm-hmm. And I was telling you the other day that I have this little furlough passion project that I'm working on, which is creating my own theatrical adaptation of The Little Prince. And I did it because I felt like the messages in there see the community. They see what we're going through. It's about what is really important. What do we really hold important? And the reason that it resonated with me and I want to continue it is because I actually feel that it actually sees the community, and that I wanted to be involved in a project where if people were in it making it happen, they saw themselves. And if people were there watching and experiencing that way, that they felt like, oh my gosh, they see me, they see my life. I can relate to this. Disney had a problem a while back, and I think they're adjusting to it, is that they kept using the word relevant as if it meant modern. We need to be relevant, which means it needs to be rap music and it needs to be this. And there's a place for all of that. But Hamilton, for goodness sake, nothing could have been more relevant. But really, relevant means, do people relate to it? Does it reach them in these two places simultaneously? Then it's relevant. So if we make relevant the intent, sometimes you can get there through being very modern. Sometimes you get there through different ways. But being relevant means just you're connecting with somebody. It's connecting with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautifully said. It really is. You know, I mean, there's a lot going on in my brain at the moment. So, because part of me, a lot of what we're talking about now requires people to be in the same space. Or it's about when people are in the same space. We're talking about that, you know. And yet we are, I mean, I was talking to my very dear friend earlier today, and we've kind of brought this up before, which is we're right now living in a time where we're being forced to not live in the same spaces, right? And so then we get to see what's fractured in our communities and the way we interact, and what's strong in our communities and the way we interact. And it's a great opportunity. We're in a moment of a great opportunity. But like in Italy, for example, I think it was yesterday, they were given the opportunity to go back outside again, you know, slowly. But the how is a big question, you know. And so there's still going to be like this sense for a while, and certainly in the United States, for many of us, of, you know, am I safe? I have to keep distance. I have to, you know, I'm having these relationships online. Some people are finding that their work will remain at home and on the computer, and, you know, things are going to change literally for them. And how does that leave us, in your opinion, in terms of where we go from here? Can we take all of these words that, you know, and their values that we've been discussing, trust, risk, connection, usefulness, worth, a belief in something, vulnerability, safety, and place it in a virtual environment and still build community? Can
Well,
we truly do that?
there are two things, because social distancing doesn't necessarily mean
Socially distant?
yes, and yeah, I like to say it's physical distancing, right? But it also doesn't all happen on this screen like it's happening here. I take a walk every day, and there are other people who sometimes share the same sidewalk, and I know, right?
Nice way to put it.
I know that I need to keep physical distance away, so I always walk against the traffic so that if I need to step into the street, I can see if there's a car coming and all of that. And I make that my job, right? Because I'm going to take care of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing I do is I make sure that as I am stepping into the street to avoid getting in their physical space, I am making sure that I am making eye contact with that person, putting a smile in my eyes if I'm wearing a mask. And a lot of times I don't have to because I'm outdoors and I'm at least 12 feet away from people. I smile at them and I let them know, good morning, how are you today? Oh, great, I'm fine. And you could see them lift like, oh, okay. He's not going here because he's scared of me. He's doing this because this is what we need to do right now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I find that has especially come into play when there are Asian people, because there's been so much prejudice against them in this disease. I want to make sure, and I live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of Asian families and there are Indian families, and I want to make sure that they understand that I'm not going out here because I think I need to be afraid of them.
Right.
Right? And I think being conscious of that makes me think, boy, I could do that even more often. You know, I could make sure that I can't be in control of what they do and what they feel, but I can be in control of what I do and what that portrays. And it has to come from a place of honesty. I can't fake it, but I can be conscious of it and be like, okay, I'm out here walking. I can really greet people.
Yeah, but
The eye contact.
so this is good, right? Because your answer to my question of a viral, can we create viral community, is actually no. Because I don't know. I mean, what I'm thinking is your response was about being physically present with somebody
Yes,
else.
yes. So now let's go into, so how has this affected me because I got my dog, and so 99.9% when I'm not out walking, my connection during these last time period has been through the screen, like I am with you right now.
Yes.
And I think those people who have Zoomed with me, where it's a chat between a bunch of people that does not have the goal of trying to get things out of me, I do listen more. I take myself out of the mold of I need to share me. I need to share me. I need to share me. And put myself more in the mold of what did I just hear? What did I just hear? I open up that piece of me that is more curious.
Yeah.
Because I want to make a connection. The connection is more important than any kind of ego approval, right? That ultimately is going to make me happier. And then I will ultimately get the question, well, Glenn, you haven't told us what you were doing. Well, okay. But that's not my mindset going in. I'm not trying to think of what I'm going to say next while that person is talking.
Hmm.
And I think that kind of behavior, which I realize that I can get caught up in as anybody in, well, I've got a great story to tell. Where's the opening for me to tell my story? And trust that if my story is valuable to this conversation, it will end up coming out.
So if we take that, I mean, because I hate to keep hammering on this, but it's been hammering on my head for a while now. And if we take that, so right now we're discussing having like an online conversation, and we know we're going to have our third high school reunion conversation coming up sometime next week, right? So, and we do that, and it's fabulous, but that's not necessarily the building of a community, right? I mean, we relate to each other because we were part of the same school, and maybe we could say that was part of a community back in the day, but in terms of an active community and this world that we live in where we are physically distancing ourselves, not to say socially distancing ourselves. So we're physically distancing ourselves more, and some things will remain that way. How do we assure for the health of our society that the values of a healthy community can build online, so that the dysfunction that seems to be very prevalent can be balanced? That there can be a consciousness applied, that maybe we as theater artists also can offer this environment, not as entertainers, but really as I don't know, tour guides to the, I don't want to say leaders right now.
Hopefully, Barry, we know how to connect. I
Well,
mean,
that's it, right?
The funny thing is I think I don't agree with a part of what you said,
Tell
because
me, I want to know.
when we got together with our Homedale alumni,
Mm.
I came out of it feeling a ton more connection.
Oh, absolutely. No, that I agree with.
And
But
and there's another group that I went to. I was part of a grief group, support group for a while, right? And so I have taken it upon myself to occasionally put together a Zoom meeting. And from that Zoom meeting, there's actually one individual who kind of just reached out to me and said, you know what, let's keep in touch a little more. And every once in a while, I will call her. And letting people know you care, putting that on your intentional list. I care, right? And not doing the let me know if you need anything, but actually just taking the action. I'm making the phone call. I'm going to leave soup on your doorstep. I, you know, I am talking with some friends tonight, and you know what? I know you don't know them, but they're a great group, and I think you get along with it. Why don't you come and Zoom with us?
Yes. So here's my question then, and I understand what you're saying. This is great. Are you saying then that connection is community? Because I was defining it differently, and now you're making me think about it, which is what I want to be doing. That's why we're having this conversation. So, is connection community? I mean, or is community connection? I don't know, one or the other.
Yeah, I don't think you can have a community without connecting.
Right.
But I do believe that it is. Maybe the answer is yes. I feel like for me, connecting with people in a more full way is something that I didn't have. I was not practiced at. I was not practiced at. And I wasn't practiced at it because I was running the gallery theater with my husband of 26 years. I had my mother living with us. I had all of these things that took up all this time in my life that community was enough for me. I had my Disney work friends with my community, the gallery theater that was this, and then when all the people I lived with passed away and we closed the theater and all of this happened, I realized that I wasn't as good at taking these other community relationships and really fostering them on my own without the I live with them, or I keep inviting them to my theater, or how do I foster that without the let's do a play, right? And so I have been exploring that personally. And I do believe it's about connecting. And for me, I connect through storytelling. Not just my storytelling, but listening to your stories and finding out how that makes us feel and how where we're so similar, and oh my gosh, where we're different, and understanding each other through all of that. And I think theater people are such great storytellers. We live through story, and we explore stories through empathy, right? And I think all of those things need to be in place in order to connect. We need to listen, we need to see, we need to empathize, we need to get excited about the other.
So this is, you're making my head spin. So this is where I'm thinking about the difference between connected relationship, okay, so, and then a community of connected relationships, and then a society of interconnected communities, maybe, right? But there's something that I was thinking earlier, and Tom's asking a question here that's kind of related to that, which is, do communities thrive without a common set of goals? Can they be goal-less? And my feeling is communities, my question, it's not my feeling, my question is, do communities have to have some sort of actionable behavior, or can they exist totally relationally, without any actionable behavior that they collectively do together? Because you were talking about, being storytellers. That is very much a collective action that we're taking.
Yeah.
So that's a lot I just dumped at you. So
I,
you
yeah,
can.
I'm thinking that it's what I was talking about before when I said that Disney calls community culture. I think there has to be a value system that we all agree. I think it's not that there has to be a specific task, but I think the goal of living in a world where people care for each other, that a community can get behind. You know what? All my goal is to connect with my neighbors and let them know there's somebody out there to care. And if I believe in that, if I believe in the worth of that, and that's part of who I am and what my life is about, then I'm feeling like I'm a part of this community. I think to feel a part of something, there's a difference between belonging and fitting in. I think in order to belong, we need to feel that we are useful in that to that community. And whether that community is 3 people or 800 people or 10,000 people, we need to feel useful. I think fitting in can be, oh, well, I need to be a part of that specifically, or I need to act like this. Oh, I need to, and personally, I'm not interested in fitting in because I've been horrible at it all my life. But belonging,
Same here.
you know,
Yeah.
belonging is something that I long for. And in order to belong, I have to feel like I am useful to these to the world that I'm interacting in.
Mm. Mm.
I don't know if that answers your question, Tom.
Oh, I think he says that would be the goal. That would be a goal. He'd call that a goal.
Yeah. Well, then there is a certain goal. The goal just might be to feel like I am of some use, and I say I am some use rather than that I am appreciated by, because I think I am appreciated by demands that somebody else needs to feel a certain way, and I am of some use only demands that I behave in a certain way.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that we can be in charge of.
Yeah.
Whether it's appreciated or not, I don't know. But if I can believe I'm of some use, life is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I don't know. It gave me so much to think about.
That's why I put extra coffee.
No, I just, when I think about healthy community, which I've been thinking about a long time now, several years, and you're touching on a lot of elements that I have found through my research and my experience to be very valuable, very important. You mentioned a word earlier which I know is a guiding light for you, action for you, which is curiosity. And that is a part of the fourth pillar of this 4-pillar, which is whole artist elements. The first element is curiosity. And so I'm beginning to, I'm seeing all of this interaction, this interconnectivity. It has a lot to do with also another word you used, which is consciousness, raising consciousness, conscious action and relationships, and that building our communities or our society is going to require effort, and an effort that is individual, in each of how we deal with it, but that is a collective decision that we have to find a way to, I think, have some drastic changes, frankly, in how we do communicate and how we do organize our living together, so that we can live in a more caring environment, and we can live in a more peaceful planet,
And
and
I think when you say drastic changes,
mm,
there's almost, I don't think it'll feel like a drastic change. I think it'll feel like I'm doing what I do when things are working best. Because
yeah,
I think we have all experienced that kind of good, caring communication with certain people, certain events, certain communities, certain moments in our life. And it's getting a hold of those moments and understanding what made them feel so right,
mm.
and then allowing that to happen more often. That's where this whole intentionality happens.
And allowing them to cross into other communities. That's my that's
Big time.
my
Big time. It's got to be not something that I just do here.
yeah,
It becomes, I have learned so much from, I've been so fortunate in my work environments, and coming to a place where I am consciously thinking about all the great things from here and from there and from the other place, and be conscious about, well, when it was good, what the heck was I doing? Right? What was I feeling? How come that worked so well?
right.
Why did everyone come out of that feeling so bonded and like this was so joyous, and it just felt right, and it wasn't easier, it was harder, but we loved doing it because we felt so good at the end of it. To be conscious of those things
Mm,
helps me say, well, here's what I need to do. Disney has this thing that is like their pillars. It's called the four keys.
mm,
And it's safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. And the idea is that these things cannot be seen separately. They have to be seen as working together. And that's how I feel about your pillars,
yeah,
right? That's why it's so hard to talk about one without talking about the other. Because, at Disney, if it was safety above all else, well, then people would be, not allowed to participate or get onto an attraction. There is nothing that is safety above all else that you can do, you know? However, if we're going to have an attraction or an experience, we can try to make it the safest that we possibly can,
right.
you know? If we're going to be courteous, you know, can we be courteous and still think about show and efficiency? Because if we're just being courteous and efficiency goes to hell, we can't survive, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why your pillars are so important,
Mm,
is because they are interconnected when it feels right. To create a healthy community, they have to be interconnected.
yeah. You said something that I want to kind of close on, which I thought was very interesting, which is that um, I think this is what you said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I will.
I know, thank goodness. It's great knowing you so many years, Glenn.
Yeah.
So, which is that I had said it's hard work, or I had said it's a drastic change, and you had said something that made me think about the energy behind it. That yes, it may be different. You didn't say this, but I think this is kind of
Yeah.
it may be a different thing to do, but the energy that it will create within you will be something that you will want to regenerate.
Yes. Yes. When we're involved in something like that, we want it to. When we get there, it feels right. I think I was telling you the other day that Disney has been, one of their things is, put the cast first.
Mm,
And when it goes wrong is when people think, oh, that means let's make it just easier for them, because that's what the cast wants. They want it to be easier. cast doesn't want it to be easier. They want it to be fulfilling. They want a job that they're proud to come to. They want a job that they feel good at the end of the day. Now, if we abuse them physically and don't give them breaks and all of that stuff, they're not going to feel good at the end of the day. So that's a part of it. But pride in what we do, knowing that I make a difference, being spoken to and with rather than being spoken at, that is putting our cast first, right?
Yeah.
And we know it when we got it right. We can sense it, we can feel it, and we want to repeat it, right? But it's being conscious of that can sometimes be the flaw. You go, why did that work so well? Oh, that's right. That's right. That's what we did, you know?
That kind of goes to because Tom's is the star of the show here, but that kind of takes me to his comment over here, which I think is important, which is the question is individualism and community at odds with each other? Because of course, a lot of people feel that this is the problem in our communities, in our society. And at the moment is that people are valuing their individuality much higher than being a part of the community, you know, like walking down the street. You are thinking about that, but other people may not. And
God, I hope it's not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, I hope that a community is a community because it values the individuality of its members. If everybody thought alike and spoke alike, and then you'd flatline.
Yeah.
You'd flatline. There's no room for growth there. But when you have somebody involved that thinks differently than you do, the key is to find that exciting
and not threatening.
Yes.
Yeah. See, this is so interesting, and we're gonna have to find another time to keep going on this one. But I'm finding this fascinating because it's this idea that that you do not have to be threatened by the concept of being a good community member. Your individualism is needed, not to be put aside, but to be enhanced and encouraged. And that I've not really heard anybody talking about that so much.
That's what we do in theater. That's
what we right?
I mean, that's inherent in what we do, especially. I always say, as a director, I'm a better editor than a creator, right? Because I bring the right people into the room. They have diversity of thought and opinion. Here's the umbrella. How are you going to fill it up? And then I help curate it, because what they come up with, if it was just what was in my head, that would be boring to me. It's what everybody else is bringing to the table that makes it wow. And that's why I love working in the arts, because we do value differences when we're at our best.
Yes, and build from them. From them. I think that we've been talking for an hour now.
Oh, there we go.
And it's amazing how fast that went. But I really actually do want to say, and thank you, Tom, so very much. I do also want to say, Glenn, that you really talked through this with me in a way that has highlighted some really interesting themes and concepts, and I'm deeply appreciative of that. Because I think that my hope from these conversations is to encourage other people to have these conversations, but I'm also selfishly trying to learn from other people. And I've learned from you today. So I'm really grateful that you took the time and you met with me.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next project we work on together, Barry.
Well, yes. All right. Well, I'm going to end our broadcast, but you can stay online and I'll meet you in the studio. Okay. Thanks, Glenn.
All right. Thanks.